November evenings usually seem bleak and desolate by themselves. However, this one seems a bit grayer than usual. The outside world is a step beyond hopeless, and I'm afraid I might know why. The last few days have been ominous. The dark gray presence has gotten to me, and I've become jumpy and anxious. I've locked myself indoors and watched children's cartoons for hours sometimes. Their sprightly behavior greatly contrasts the real world I live in. This seems to help. As these thoughts of despair jump around in my head, I catch the expression of my cat in the corner of my eye. It's an expression of worry, whether it be for my mental health or be it the fact that the grayness has gotten to him too, I'm not sure. The idea that we share this emotion only makes my fear more concrete. He jumps from his perch and waddles to his dish, perhaps believing some food will solve his problems. It seems a good enough idea, so I grab my wallet and head outside, set on a coffee shop which stays open late. Looking at people as I walk, I realize some of the gray has been cast upon their eyes. They are not so much glazed looks as they are foggy and lifeless. Happy enough, it seems, but no color. I, on the other hand, must look like a walking storm cloud. Gray on the outside, gray on the inside. The cup of coffee tastes like mop water and the muffin is reminiscent of sawdust. How can everything just be so awful? Then the whole thing dawns on me. This weather, these people, and this coffee, these things are not gray. I am gray. It's simply life seen through a biased lens, and I know now I can no longer hide from it. I believe I went overboard the last time I visited my dear friend Richard. Our visits always start off with the best of intentions, but get a few drinks into him and into me, and we begin fighting. The darkest hate brews in me when he gets a certain way, always in my face and always so damn arrogant. An apology is in order, an apology which will never fade, one that will last in eternity. By this time, I'm already in my truck. I go in and out of consciousness as I play over the events in the past and in the present. I prefer not to think about what is to come. Now the dirt road I promised myself I would never drive on again is beneath my tires. That mountain trail to the lake that haunts my dreams is now all too real again. A flashback to that one night nearly pulls me off the road. Why did we drink so much that night? He made a promise to me and he broke it. He knew I would get that way and still pushed. Come on, man, have a drink, man. I mock him in a ridiculous voice, but quickly stop as I realize how wrong it is. I glance at my fuel gauge, nearly empty. Not enough for a round trip. The lake is in sight. I walk shakily to the shore, then continue along to that familiar tree, the tree which has a canoe leaning against it. Why didn't I burn the stupid thing? I don't know. Then again, how can I say I'm sorry without it? I hop in and began paddling, leaving a seam as I cut through the mist. I jump when the water I've taken in seeps through my shoes and socks and makes contact with my feet. I shiver and exhale, sending out a cloud which bends in with my surrounding. An unknown force stops me cold in my tracks. I look around and realize I'm about in the middle of the lake, about the exact spot I dumped his body. I peered into the water dumbly, pure black. I pull out my waterproof flashlight and pause briefly. It's the first time out of its package, and I never thought I would be using it like this. In retrospect, this was very bad light to cover up a murder. At about 12 feet at its deepest, it shouldn't take long for me to find him. I go over my to-do list, find him, bring him up, bury him properly, apology accepted. I turn the light on. My eyes scream for mercy. The moon has been my only light source thus far, and this flashlight is indeed bright. My heart is about to leap out of my throat as I contemplate my dive from the canoe. I jump. The water throttles my lungs and I flail about until my breathing is back to normal. I don't have much time. It's cold. I plunge my head under and force my eyes open, searching the lake bed frantically. Nothing. I come up for air and take a second to listen to the crickets. After inhaling a few misty breaths, I go back down. My flashlight catches the torso of Richard. The rest of him suspended weightlessly just above the ground. I swim towards him and then come up for air as my lungs begin to burn. Another few breaths, more than last time. The crickets have stopped. They want nothing to do with this filthy business. My mind begins to work. My heart is pounding. This water is colder than I imagined. Waiting to catch my breath isn't working anymore as I tread water. Adding to my list of troubles is this damn seaweed. It touches my ankle and a shiver runs down my spine. I kick my leg up to avoid it, but it seems to follow a path. What started as a tickle now feels like a rope or a noose. Panic sets in and I feel trapped. I point my flashlight down just in time to see his decomposed hand tearing my flesh and him mouthing the words, "Apology accepted." I was working as a personal injury lawyer when Melissa came into my life. I fell in love with her the moment I met her. She was a very beautiful woman. I knew she was the perfect woman for me, and someday we would be married. On our wedding day, we took our vows at the altar. She swore she would never leave me. She would stay with me through thick and thin. I promised Melissa I would always take care of her. I would never let anything bad happen to her. I would always be there to protect her. When we came back from our honeymoon, we moved into a little bungalow outside of town. I set up a law office and Melissa took care of the house. Our married life was bliss and we settled into a comfortable routine. Every day after I finished work, I would call Melissa and tell her what time I'd be home for dinner. However, that all changed one evening when I called Melissa and she didn't answer the phone. That was the first indication I got that something was seriously wrong. When I arrived home, I was shocked to see the front door standing open. At that moment, I knew Melissa was in trouble. She needed me to protect her. I grabbed a hammer from under the car seat and rushed inside. "Melissa, I'm home," I shouted. "Where are you? Melissa?" She didn't answer. There was an ominous silence. The kitchen was empty and the dinner was burning on the stove. I turned it off and looked around. Everything was in disarray. Broken plates and smashed bowls were strewn about the floor. Gripping the hammer in my hand for protection, I searched the house, calling out my wife's name. I found her in the bedroom lying on the floor. Her clothes were torn and her face was bruised and bloody, but she was still alive. "Melissa," I cried, "what happened?" "I don't know," she groaned. "A man broke in. He demanded money. When I told him I didn't have any, he started hitting me. He wouldn't stop hitting me. I couldn't fight him off. It hurt so much." "Don't worry, I'm here now," I said, trying to soothe her. "Everything's going to be okay." I picked up my injured wife, and holding her in my arms, I carried her out to the car. Opening the door, I laid her down as gently as possible in the back seat. Then I hopped into the driver's seat and we drove off towards town. "We've got to go to the police," she said. "We will," I replied, "but first I'm going to bring you to a hospital." Behind me, I heard Melissa let out a little gasp. Her injuries were serious. I cursed the fact that I hadn't been home that day to protect her. I had to get her to a doctor as soon as possible. We drove through town, but on the way we got stuck in a traffic jam. I started honking my horn, trying to clear the way. Suddenly, I heard Melissa cry out, "There he is!" "Who?" I asked, startled. "The man who attacked me. That's him. That's him." On the left-hand side of the street, there was a man getting out of his car. Melissa was pointing at him. "Are you sure?" I asked. She became hysterical. Tears were pouring down her cheeks and she was having trouble catching her breath. "That's him! That's him!" I pulled over to the side of the road and parked the car. My brain was boiling over with rage. I got out of the car, still clutching the hammer. The man was casually walking down the street without a care in the world. I followed him. Then I saw him turn down a dark alley. I don't know what came over me. I just planned to rough him up a little, then hand him over to the police. Somehow I lost control of myself. I couldn't stop. It was over in a few seconds. When I came back to the car, Melissa seemed to have calmed down. We didn't say a word to each other. I grabbed the tissue and wiped the blood from my hands. Then I hid the bloody hammer under the seat and we drove off. When we got to the hospital, I helped Melissa out of the car and carried her to the emergency room. As we walked through the front door, she suddenly stopped in her tracks and grabbed my arms tightly. She was trembling as she pointed at one of the doctors. "That's him," she whispered urgently. "That's him." Then she pointed to one of the nurses. "That's him," she screamed. "That's him." If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you'd like to, you can follow me at Twitter. The handle is @FuzzyPantaloons, and I'll see you all next time.